It's the weekend edition of the show. Welcome to the Morning Brief right here on Channels Television. We're broadcasting live from the nation's commercial nerve center, Lagos. I'm with my people, as always, Coyote and Bukola.
Hi, Jeffrey.
Hi, Jeffrey.
Hello, Coyote.
Why is everybody looking suspect? Like,
you know, when you start with a view of traffic in Lagos, sometimes you start getting PTSD. That's what I'm about to get into. But don't worry, the road is quite clear this morning, so that just gives you a sense of a smooth ride today.
Yes, it's time to take things easy, but not to give anything lesser than the best. Good morning and welcome to the Morning Brief. I am Bukola Koka.
And I'm Karaoke Kiolu. It's a Friday edition, and we're ready to help you ease into the weekend the right way.
I was just looking at Bukola's yellow dress. Is it dress now? What do you call it? Is it top or dress?
Jeffrey.
Is it dress or top? Just
I
help
give
me
you more
now.
credit, for fashion as far as, women things are concerned. I mean, yesterday you were talking about foundation. Now. This is certainly not a dress.
So exactly. So you just tell me it's not
top.
Is it top? It's a question.
Yeah.
Is it top?
Right? We need a lot of help when it comes to this fashion thing.
Yeah.
So when we seek help, you meet us halfway.
And there's no shame in it.
He got the yellow part.
He got the yellow part.
So we meet ourselves.
I said, is it a dress or a top? So you choose one. I gave you options.
So here's the thing: the Nigerian term, anything you wear
is a dress. Okay, I guess that's where it comes from. Thank you, Jeffrey.
So absolutely. So I was driving down. I saw the sun rising. It's been a while. I saw the sun rise. So just beautiful. So I told my wife, and I said, take pictures. Look, it's just that she took the pictures, but some Okada riders and some things that wouldn't make it look nice spoiled that picture. But I'm going to say I will script. But it's just beautiful to see how nature works. It's just beautiful that the rising of the sun, and you begin to see the day, see things clearer. And it's just beautiful to imagine all of those things that God, who is the creator, is so powerful that he did all of this for all of us so that, we can have the best. Look at us, we breathe out carbon dioxide and taking oxygen from plants. So the earth is designed to be self-sufficient. We're just the ones trying to destroy what we have. So it was so beautiful to see that as I was driving down to work. So beautiful, so beautiful. So how many of you saw the rising of the sun wherever you live? I don't know. Did you see? Okay, you live behind the sun, right?
It's actually a sight I look forward to. The sun, the moon, and the stars.
Kyle, you didn't reprimand Jeffrey for saying I live behind
Jeffrey, why would you say that?
No, because
okay,
I was...
Go ahead.
Let me how dare you say
no,
you
because,
live behind
let me explain. I have an explanation. Because I was driving down. I live in Lagos, and I'm coming towards this direction. Bukola lives on the other side. So I'm looking at the sun, and I'm looking at the rising of the sun, and I know I'm looking in Bukola's direction. There's no way Bukola can see that sun.
Really?
Bukola has to be in a set. No way Bukola can see that sun.
Jeffrey,
Bukola will be backing that.
Jeffrey, your science is new for me.
I'm just saying.
So it makes sense. So the north, south, and then you see the sun rising.
So that means countries further down Nigeria to the west live behind the sun.
No, he's just saying when you're approaching, the sun is...
You see, you understand.
Sort of. But you know what?
The Morning Brief science. So go ahead, Kari.
Go ahead where exactly? I need you guys to resolve this so we can move on.
No, but I was very clear that as I'm driving down, I'm coming to work, I'm seeing the sun. If Bukola is driving down, Bukola cannot see the rising of the sun.
Okay.
Else it's going to be dangerous for her to drive because she has to look back from where she lives and comes to work.
Okay.
That doesn't mean where you live is bad. I'm just saying I have a vantage position in this scenario.
Doesn't make sense.
Well, from the Morning Brief perspective, maybe it does. But it's a good way to look at Jeffrey's kind of nature this morning. Yeah. I don't know if you have any contribution.
I just want to say,
I'm still thinking about it.
Let there be peace. Okay, at the conciliator. Usually, this is the position I'm in. Conciliator between Jeffrey and Bukola. So let peace reign. Just like the Ministry of Labour is conciliating sort of between the government and Labour. We understand that negotiations are still ongoing for minimum wage. But something caught my attention, guys. There was a protest at a neuropsychiatric hospital, Aro, and it was against what the patients, the psychiatric patients, described as poor treatment, poor welfare, the power supply not having backup, and the rest. So you know what they say, it's really hitting deep, trickling down. So it looks like everybody is feeling this, but it's important to hear what the hospital management has to say for such institution. But a protest at a neuropsychiatric hospital?
I've never heard it before.
Never heard it before. Protest by new psychiatric patients against
the patients
poor
themselves.
treatment.
Oh, well.
In fact, they said that some of the staff were almost injured. They had to escape at some point, but normalcy was restored. It was said to be for 2 hours. You can check that on our website, actually. It's quite shocking, guys.
Ooh. Well, you know what they say, that you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you cannot fool all of the people all of the time. And it appears that you cannot fool even new psychiatric patients at any time if they can stand up for their own rights. But it speaks a lot to what's happening in our health sector, particularly, the welfare of new psychiatric patients. Recall that report earlier in the year, or towards the end of last year, about how the economic situation is causing an increase in mental health crisis. And, we had new psychiatric, healthcare practitioners on the program who had supplied information to the effect that, treatment for patients has increased also as a result of the economic situation. So perhaps that, sets out how there should be increased funding for the health sector, not just in that regard, in that aspect of healthcare, but across board, such that this crisis situation that's been witnessed in the health sector can be nipped in the bud.
Absolutely. So, well, let's get to what we're talking about today.
Oh, yes.
But before we get to it, let's remember that we got the news that the portal for student loan will be opened on May the 24th. So that's a cherry news for students. So if you're a student out there and you're qualified, so my advice is always go read the ad so that you know how eligible you are or not. Go apply and get that funding for education. So let's get to the business of the day. What are we talking about today? The organized labor has given the federal government till the end of the month to propose what they consider a reasonable offer as a national wage, or face the consequence of its action following a proposal of 48,000 by government against Labour's 615,000 naira minimum wage demand. Can both parties find a middle ground? We'll explore that conversation on the show right here on the Morning Brief.
Well, that's not all. It's a colorful, Friday full of variety that we have for you. She's an all-round creative that finds expression through her voice and her ability to take on and immerse herself into various characters just to immortalize time and eras. Omowunmi Dada is our guest on the show today, and I'm excited about this.
Women supporting women. I love that.
Always.
But that's not all, guys. Break dancing is an art that dates back 60s, 70s. It was an era where it was trying to amplify civic rights and voices, and this was an expression of art that just blew minds. And it started as part of the hip-hop culture in New York, but guess what? It has gained mainstream prominence, not just for some of us who try to break dance as children, but is set to debut at the Olympics. So if you've got moves, join us later to find out what's up with our guests on the show. Perhaps we'll maybe bust some moves, guys.
Perhaps Jeffrey will do some break dancing this morning.
Yeah, I'm looking out for Bukola to do that break dance because this is your canvas that you wore. You're going to see, don't worry. So they will join us. So these gentlemen and ladies will be joining us to give us that break move, that break dancing, oh boy. For information, don't try it at home if you're not properly trained. Okay, so Bukola and Kayode and I, we'll see what we can bring to the table.
Jeffrey, you must break dance. You must moonwalk.
Moonwalk. I don't know how to moonwalk for the record.
We could learn. So we'll break dance, not break bones on the show.
All right.
The only thing I know about breaking and moving is robotics, which I learned in school.
And we'll show that. Watch out.
Forget that part of the story. Don't forget, you can join us. Just go to X and post, and we'll continue that conversation right there to tell you exactly what you're saying right here on the show, amplifying your voice, as well as on our WhatsApp number. Send your messages and, of course, your videos as well. That's the number right there, the magic one. But don't call as well. Just send your videos and your messages. We'll be here to amplify your voice. We always tell you it's a community show. So let's do this together. It's a weekend edition. Let's just tone it a bit down and just take things a little easy with ourselves and make the most of the moment. All right. When we come back after this break, we'll bring you our top stories. Join us again. Top on the brief this morning is a mandate handed down the House of Representatives Committee on Agriculture, Production and Services to carry out a comprehensive investigation into the introduction of genetically modified crops in Nigeria by the National Biosafety Management Agency. The committee is also to assess the potential health and environmental hazard or risk associated with genetically modified crops following a motion by Mr. Mukhtar Shagaya on the need to investigate the introduction of GMOs. Prior to that, the President, Bola Tinubu, has transmitted the anti-doping bill to the House, which he believes will prevent the country from sanctions in the world of sports, as read on the floor by the Deputy Speaker, Benjamin Kalu.
The enactment of this vital legislation will also help Nigeria avoid the imposition of signatory consequences, inclusive of loss of hosting and participating at regional, continental, and world championships or major athletic events.
Urge the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, to cause the already introduced GM foods and crops in Nigeria to be properly labeled to safeguard consumers. 3, mandate the Committee on Agricultural Production and Services to A, conduct a comprehensive investigation into the introduction of genetically modified crops in Nigeria by the National Biosafety Management Agency. B, assess the potential health and environmental risks associated with genetically modified crops and report back to the House within 4 weeks.
Staying in the nation's capital, President Bola Tinubu has welcomed his Senegalese counterpart, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, to the State House, Abuja. The president was flanked by senior members of his cabinet who were on hand to receive the Senegalese leader to the nation's capital. The 44-year-old Faye, who has never held an elective office, was sworn in as the president of the West African country in April after a sweeping first-round victory. Is in Abuja on an official visit where they discussed about terrorism and fighting against human trafficking. What appears to further look like further bold moves to assert his authority in the ongoing political crisis in Rivers State. Governor Siminalayi Fubara has cautioned local government chairmen in the state to conduct themselves and avoid instigating trouble. Governor Fubara, who hinted on a possible next move, advised the council chairman to prepare to leave office in June when their tenure expires. The governor, who was speaking at the flag-off of Elele Omoku Road in the state, had earlier hosted members of the Joy Youth Council to maintain the peace despite provocation in the state.
Nobody is a monopoly or has monopoly of violence. I should be the one who will even come and shout that I will do this, I will do that. But I don't need to do that because because both sides belong to me. So I'm advising those people who call themselves local government chairmen. You have a few days in office. Please conduct yourself. Politics will come, politics will go. We will still live our lives. Let anybody not deceive you. If you deliberately hurt anybody in the course of maybe expressing your useless support, nobody will forgive you. You will pay for it. So I'm begging everyone, please conduct yourself.
Let's talk security, where the military has declared Halilu Buzo wanted for terrorism or terrorist activities, illegal arms supplies, illegal mining, and castle rustling. At the bi-weekly media briefing of the Defense Media Operations, the director, Major General Edward Buba, says Halilu Buzo, who is from Niger Republic but resides in Zamfara State, often escapes to Niger Republic after operating in Nigeria. General Buba says the military is working with its counterpart from the other country to ensure the arrest of the terrorists. I can tell you that the federal government has assured of a strategic roadmap that will ensure the completion of the digital switchover. The Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mr. Mohammed Idris, relayed the assurance when he received members of the Executive Council of the Independent Broadcasters Association of Nigeria. Mr. Idris explains that the President has directed the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment to look at the possibility of providing loans to media organizations at a single-digit interest. Another statesman and former Nigeria's High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, Dr. Christopher Collody, has weighed in on effective leadership for national and industrial transformation. In a select gathering of minds drawn from diverse sectors who converge on Lagos, Dr. Collody believes that leadership is critical and is well done when it is done by example.
This discussion is not leadership in the abstract. It's not leadership only as a concept. It is leadership as it relates to our practice, our experience. So if you look at the principles that I have put in this paper, I've put 7 principles. But there is one basic principle that I want to remind all of us of. And that is that the leader himself is a member of the team. If we practice leadership which separates the leader from the team, which makes the leader preside over some concept and everybody else is just doing his will, that is a wrong concept of leadership. And I use something we all know about. A football team. If I ask you who is the leader of the football team, you point to the captain. And the captain has responsibility to make sure that something happens. And the team may say we want to win or we don't want to lose. So whatever the objective is, he is leading.
This holds true in what we do in Charles on a daily basis. Everybody is a member of the team. Everyone is very important. Everyone, whether he's a Muslim or a Christian, must always understand the fact that the work he does with Charles is not unto him, but unto God. What are we there to do when we find ourselves in leadership positions? We must be there for the common good. As long as we know that it's not about enriching ourselves, it's in fact, I dare say, inconveniencing yourself or pauperizing yourself because you've got to make sure that the people are the focus of your leadership. Once we get that in Nigeria, the country will change.
And that was the chairman and CEO of Channels Media Group talking about leadership by example as well, that people are the center of every organization. Well, let's move on now to some needed clarification by the Minister of Finance, Mr. Wale Edun, over reports that the federal government plans to illegally access 20 trillion naira pension and life insurance fund to develop infrastructure. The minister explains that the pension industry is highly regulated with strict limits on how funds can be invested. And according to him, the federal government has no intention of violating these regulations which are designed to protect workers' pension. Outside our show, South Africa is asking the International Court of Justice to order Israel to stop its assault on Rafah, accusing Israel of genocide against Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. The South African country filed its case earlier in the year over Israel's war on Gaza, seeking additional emergency measures following its attack on Rafah. Over 1 million people have been displaced and thousands killed since the war against Hamas started in October after Hamas attacked southern Israel. We hope that war in southern Israel is going to, taper down at some point. Let's go now to the world of sports. Where title hopefuls Manchester City will be without goalkeeper Edison on Sunday's concluding game of the Premiership season at home to West Ham United at the FA Cup final against Manchester United at Wembley on May the 25th. Edison was forced off with a facial injury during Manchester City's 2-0 win at Tottenham Hotspur on Tuesday that left Pep Guardiola's men on the brink of an unprecedented fourth successive English top-flight title. Scans have confirmed Edison suffered a small fracture to the right eye socket following a collision with Christian Romero. And those are the stories we've been tracking for in the last, 24 hours and early part of the day. Well, it will shape part of our conversation for today, but I'm being joined right now by Crowded, who brings us some of the things you've been talking about on X.
Jeffrey, we're starting off with the big ones, minimum wage. And you've been talking about it, so let's see some of the things you are talking about. The trade union, Labour generally, has condemned federal government's proposal of 48,000 naira. So Labour proposed 615. That was like the asking price.
Yeah,
when you haggle in the market. So it says 615 for this, and then the federal government played a Nigerian mother thing on us. How about 48,000 naira?
It's very funny.
Absolutely.
It's like Labour went to federal government was saying it like, why did you go so high? And then in reply they say, I'll go so annoyingly low for you.
Right?
Like it looked like that. It looks like that.
And Labour was miffed. So let's see what you're saying about this. We'll begin from Kabir Mukhtar 91. That's the first user that has a comment on the show this morning. It says, we will not recognize and condemn the said proposed 48,000 naira as new minimum wage. It goes on to say, looking at the current economic situation, subsidy removal, hike in electricity tariff, it is unfair for federal government to present 48,000 naira as minimum wage. So I'm quite curious, why do you say we will not recognize and condemn? But the point I think you made in the second part, you're trying to say that, you will not recognize this proposed 48,000 naira, Jeffrey.
Perhaps he's saying there's room for more negotiation.
Yeah.
Chigozie Madom says, the federal government representatives should be honest with reality. They should consider house rent, transportation to the place of work, feeding, other basic utility bills and savings. For the 8K or for the 8,000 as you call it, can't get half bag of rice, beans, gari, etc. How do they want people to survive? All right.
Well, Meslak O2 has the next one saying, and this is a target, what this person believes should be the minimum ground. Anything less than 100,000 naira, new minimum wage, should not be entertained. And that's just the crux of this particular one. So 100,000 naira should be the least for this user.
All right, this is Berlin Syndrome says, wow, that's a wonderful name, Berlin Syndrome. I don't know what that means. Says, what's 48K? I hope this is a joke, Sha. When inflation is at an all-time high, people don't even have the money to purchase basic things again.
And just this one now breaks it down to the state level. Adlove Global says, I think each state, I think that's what the user was trying to say, each state should pay according to their state's income. And that is what I think is also missing in this whole dialogue. So when you reach out, some of the representatives, they tell you, negotiation is ongoing, we cannot say anything, but it's important for you to show your workings.
Yeah.
Labour has shown their workings.
Yes.
They told us why they came
broke
to that
it
figure.
down.
So tell us what you're able to pay and why you are offering that amount. I think it's as simple as that.
All right, Igono Matthias says, after earning less than 50K monthly, then after retirement, your pension funds have been used up for the wrong purpose. Is there any advantage of being a Nigerian? Okay, I think the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy has provided clarification as to the issue of the pensions and what happened. It actually sat down and did more like a clarification video to that effect.
Absolutely. There are laws guiding that. So it's important for us to get acquainted with those laws and be sure that we follow up so that the law is not being broken. But let's move on to yet another thing that concerns you. You know, when you get your salary, well, they say a chunk of it goes to feeding, but another chunk goes to what? Rent. And we understand that the House of Reps is seeking what it called house rent regulation to regulate outrageous rents in Nigeria. I hear a lot of tenants saying, yes, finally, but it's still in the works. But take a look at this first one. It's from Oladapo Miki. One says they should start in Lagos first. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay.
Maybe this is a good time to invite Bakari back to come and talk about this.
Right?
Yes.
And this user breaks it down. Agent fee, agreement fee, caution fee, toilet fee, Egbadugo fee, all should be removed with immediate effect.
What does that even mean? What does Egbadugo mean? I don't know.
It will take like an hour to break down what Egbadugo means, but it just means the tip you give some people in the area.
Oh, boy.
Those people who sort of tax you from time to time.
All right, let's go to the next person. This is a Lumen 5. Is it 5,000 or 500,000?
5,000.
5,000. The government should build government affordable houses for citizens. Reduce the cost of building materials. With this, all this will fall in the right places. Landlords and our victims too. The cost of building houses is too high. Nigeria is one of the cheapest in house rent all over the world. You know, I just qualm whenever I see this. Nigeria is the cheapest. I don't get comfortable with that statement. I always say, if Providence has provided that we get some things cheaper than the rest of the world, why should we plan against ourselves? There are things in our country that are more expensive in this country than some part of the world. So let's not always run there, all right?
Yeah, and it's just to be clear on that one. You see figures and data that actually point to real estate being expensive in Nigeria. So it's quite curious seeing this one. But the next one, which you saw earlier, Joe Razor says real estate might move across the southern border. If this scales through, maybe it might drop. North is up, south is low, and you saw that earlier on, and that essentially is the thinking from this, and it believes that people might now be able to afford more things. But yeah, that's all right.
So let's go. Niger Urban Farmer says the government isn't a stakeholder in the housing sector as such. They cannot decide on the cost of rent without addressing the outrageous prices of building materials as well as cost of land. To make it better, government should build mass housing for rent and then regulate the prices. Decrease in demand will lead to decrease in price. Our gap is quite wide when it comes to the housing. I think it's over 10 million.
Deficit, right?
Yes, that gap, that deficit is too wide. Okay,
there you go.
This is okay. This is
ladies first.
Not at all. All right, this is people reacting to Senator Ndume. It was on our show, the Politics Today, and he did talk about, the death penalty for drug traffickers. He says beyond that, he would support, death penalty for corrupt officials, but he gave a criteria, not 1 million being punished the same way a 1 trillion person is being punished. So he says, this is your reaction. Sakiru Oyegunle says, why being selective? Corruption is corruption. Even if it is 5K, so far it is government money diverted for personal gains. There should be severe consequences in order to deter people generally from such practice.
There you go. And this next user says, and that's Inoazi, says Senator Ndume should not take the threshold of corruption to 1 trillion. Says even 500,000 naira is high enough, except his call is to still encourage corruption if it is at low levels.
Okay. All right, Kemen Adamu says death penalty for corruption is death penalty for corruption. You cannot say or imply that people are permitted to embezzle as long as it is not more than, is it 1 million you said here? But I think it was saying 1 trillion. Why would somebody even dare?
Thank you very much.
1 trillion. Do you know what 1 trillion is?
Of our nation is literally.
That's a good percentage of our national budget for. Man, this is reckless.
I
That
know
would be
that
reckless stealing.
Yeah, this might never happen, at least in the context we're in, to see death penalty being prescribed as punishment for corruption or grand corruption, as the case may be. But I think the point here is it should be stricter, and the cleaning should begin in-house.
Yes.
That's essentially the point of this. There's a lot more on this particular trend, but that's where we'll have to anchor so we can take in more conversations.
Exactly. So, absolutely. If we want to do the right thing, let's do the right thing. So, people that are stealing money, stop stealing government money. I think the ICPC has a job here at the EFCC to tell us how much has been stolen since 1999 till date. At least Nati does a good job with how much crude oil has been stolen, the water bill. 1999. Can we get a record? ICPC, we're asking you, ICPC specifically, and EFCC in specific as well. Give us how much politicians have stolen from our country between 1999 to date. Maybe we'll like that number. But we'll take this quick break. We'll come back to our very first conversation. Join us again. My mouth is dry.
Someone just came for me. I'm defining a boy and go.
I don't.
The government's proposal of a paltry 48,000 naira as the minimum wage does not only insult the sensibilities of Nigerian workers, but also falls significantly short of meeting our needs and aspirations. In contrast, organized private sector proposed an initial offer of 54,000. Though it is worth noting that even the least paid workers in the private sectors receive 78,000 naira. As clearly stated by the organized private sector, highlighting the stark disparity between the proposed minimum wage and prevailing standards, further demonstrating the unwillingness of the employers and government to faithfully negotiate a fair national minimum wage for workers in Nigeria. So I think maybe they should go back to drawing board. And of course, between now and the end of the month is enough time.
We call upon the government to reconsider its position and come to negotiation table with clear hands that reflects the true value of the contributions made by Nigerian workers to the nation's development and the objectives of socioeconomic realities that confront not just Nigerian workers but Nigerian as a whole. Together in this reasonable dialogue, we can work to give Nigerian workers a 615,000 minimum wage as proposed by the NLC and TUC on the basis of evidence and data. This will be in keeping with the pledge of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to ensure that a living wage is paid for Nigerian workers.
Welcome back to the program, and as we start off, we're contributing to the continuing debate on what would be the ideal minimum wage. Labour and the government seem to be in a tango for a while, but Labour has withdrawn from that tango now. Where does it all lead? What's the ideal minimum wage that would cater to the needs of Nigerian workers? And the president rather keys into a living wage in line with the ILO. So what's ideal as a living wage? Joining us to have that conversation, we have the Director General of the Michael Imodu National Institute for Labor Studies, Comrade Issa Aremu, joins us. He joins us via Zoom from Ilorin. Good morning, sir, and welcome to the program.
Yeah, good morning, Bukola. And through you, I say good morning to Kayode and Geoffrey.
Yes, sir.
I think three of you deserve your minimum pay. The effort you put to reach every morning.
Thank you very much, sir, for the vote of confidence. And also joining us is Dr. Emeka Okengu, who joins a development economist and chief executive officer, Anthill Concepts Limited, who joins us from our Abuja studio. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Bukola, the rest of the team in Lagos.
Indeed, nice to have you, sir. So I'm going to start with you, comrade from Ilori. Before we get into what is ideal, perhaps we should look into the thinking of government, which is proposing 48,000 naira, but against the backdrop of what would seem to be the facts of the matter in terms of revenue, starting from what is generated domestically. We look at the FIRS, it surpassed its target in 2023 alone by 107%. And in the first quarter of the year, it has also surpassed its target. The subnationals are also getting increased allocation from what we're seeing. And if you look at what seems to be the mainstay of the economy, which is crude oil, the benchmark for the 2024 budget is $77, but crude oil is hovering between $79 and $83 per barrel. So there are extra earnings in that regard. So Labour is talking about a marked disparity between what government is proposing and the current economic realities. Why is government proposing what many have agreed is a no-no and is well below what is even cumulative if you add the wage award that government agreed with Labour amid the removal of fuel subsidy? So why is government proposing 48,000 naira against the backdrop of these facts? Comrade, I'm starting with you first.
Yeah, Bukola, I hope I can comprehend your question, because I have some one or two interruptions from my end here. But I think the point I quickly want to raise is that this is the 60th national minimum wage negotiation that is taking place in Nigeria. The 60th. We started in 1981, then later on there was a review in 1990, then year 2000, 2010, of course, 2018. So essentially, this is the 6th national minimum wage negotiation. So we have a very rich tradition of negotiating for national minimum wage. So to that extent, I think what is currently happening is not really surprising. It has been the same road that has been traversed before. The principle of national minimum wage is that it is the least pay legally, backed up by law, below which no worker will earn. Of course, employers can pay more than the national minimum wage, but no worker, especially in establishment that employs up to 50 workers, will earn less than national legally permissible minimum wage. And the most important highlight of the negotiation process is that it's tripartite. That means it's made up of government, in this case, federal government, and state governments. Interestingly, in this new current negotiation, 6 governors are participating to reflect the geopolitical zones. Of course, you have the organized labor, ably represented by Nigeria Labour Congress, and of course, the Trade Union Congress. Of course, you now have the Nigeria Employer Consultative Association, NECA, which represents the private sector employers. So, point blank, in responding to your question about what the government is thinking, I think for us to have meaningful discussion of national minimum wage negotiation, we should have a tripartite perspective, because it's not a wage award. Nobody will give anything it is what is negotiated. And I think it's better that we weigh the perspective, the thinking of all the key actors in this respect. Of course, the parameters are clear. We have to look at the conditions of the working men and women like you, like other millions of workers in Nigeria. And I think it's already established now that the existing prevailing minimum wage, cannot make a worker to survive. The rate of inflation is clear, devaluation of the currency, high cost of living in general. I think there's a consensus of that. And this has been well articulated by the organized labor. And I'm happy that we're having the discussion. In fact, it's nice for us to treat compensation, workers' pay, as one of those microeconomic issues that we normally discuss routinely. Inflation, capacity utilization. Often we forget that you can't drive any economy without a well-paid workforce. And the way you do that is to make sure that you increase their pay. Minimum pay is part of it. So what I want to say quickly as my opening remark is that all the stakeholders must draw on the rich tradition that have been established over the years since 1981, which is that we look at the economic parameters, the state of the economy, the plight of the workers who are demanding for this pay, and I think there's a consensus on that this minimum wage cannot endure. And I think I'm happy all the parties have also agreed on that. Then we look at affordability. We also look at level of productivity for sustainability of pay. Because it's not just for you to earn the salary, we must also make sure that we protect jobs. Don't forget that in the private sector, employers there can only pay based on their capacity to produce and ability to also sustain the enterprise. So, but I have no doubt in my mind that in spite of what has happened, including the protests by labor, and I understand the concern of labor, there's a complete gap between the demand of labor proposal and the offer that's been given by the government. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But proposal is different from agreement. I also understand the fact that they work out, and I just listened to the president of NSC, Ajeru, just now from your clip, that it's not that they are not coming back. On the contrary, they've called on the government to go back to drawing board and have another proposal to come in place. But on the whole, I think we are making some progress because first, federal government under President Tinubu is very clear on the need for improvement on minimum wage. In fact, the president talk of living wage, and it is against that background that he constituted the tripartite minimum wage committee, which is the most expansive in the recent time, 37 members committee.
All right, let's take it to Dr. Okengu now. Pardon me, let's take it to Dr. Okengu so that we can manage our time. Do you agree that a proposal is not an agreement, as the comrade has said? And, really more importantly, is that the best that government can afford against the backdrop of what it's earning domestically and from the international trade?
Thank you very much, Nicola. The question will be, is that the best a nation should be seeing now in this time and state, when everybody agrees that we're way past the levels of talking about minimum wage? We should be talking about living wages. And if we're talking about living wage, and like the comrade has said, he had mentioned, in very clear terms, that jobs needs to be protected. And he talked about productivity. So I thought that for the first time, or maybe get something new to the table, let's begin to talk about something a little bit more inclusive, something a little bit more innovative. Because in looking at labor and minimum wage, also remember that belting wages is a very major factor in inflation. So it is just not for you to say, pay everybody 400 million, pay everybody 40,000, but there has to be, a clear understanding of the values herein contained. So I thought for me that what I should be seeing with Labour, having grown, the way it has, was some deeper thinking. Also now coming to government to say Nigeria belongs to all of us, instead of us now talking about wage increment as it were now, or minimum wage, we should be talking about how we're going to be expanding, the productivity space. Remembering that a lot of these people who are also in labor, are representing even industries that are more or less moribund. Some of them are from the textile, sectors that are no longer functioning. Some of them are from the manufacturing sector that's a lot that are closing down. So if what I thought, taking it from the perspective of somebody who has interest in development, was to say what we should be bringing to the table will be all the indices that should be able to make it clear to all stakeholders that this is the best for our country. And that will be what you have already mentioned. I don't need to go back to it again. Transportation, rents, medicals, and all, which were the basis of salary calculations way back in the days. So for people to wake up in the morning and say, oh, because things are not too bad or things are not too good, you're going to be paying every Nigerian worker a minimum. Somebody had talked about 615,000, another person says 105,000, and so forth and so on. So yes, it is important that workers are well paid, because every worker deserves his wages. All of us ultimately are workers. But in also doing so, we need to also take into consideration that in taking the wrong wage decisions, you can actually bleed the country to death.
Let me stay with you on this particular issue, how Labour approached the table, which is perhaps one of the reasons why Labour had to walk out, because the government, according to what we know or understand, appear not to have broken down how they arrived at 48,000. But Labour was quite empirical in how they got to the table, which I want you to speak to. They considered a family of 6, that if you have a family of 6 and you can't live with less than $2 a day, so $12 per family. And then if you multiply that by 30 days, that's $360 per month. And then they began to break it down to what they consider a cost of living index, covering housing, education, feeding, transportation, gas, kerosene, electricity, basic Medicare, clothing, and created room for inflation. They came with data for everybody to speak to and say, okay, this is what we are proposing. But it appears the government did not come with any form of empirical. We were not in the room, but that appears to be the understanding.
We should have actually brought, innovation onto the table too. And this is where you now begin to now look inwards. I mean, in this your show, a little while ago, I thought I heard that the reps were trying to, initiate a process where rent will now be regulated. I mean, you can't meet everybody's needs. That's not even possible. Okay, just like in your own case, where you work, your office is not able to meet all your needs. Now, yes, times are hard, but those times that are hard now calls for you to begin to now look for innovative ways of expanding, okay, your prosperity pathways, or your productivity. This is what I'm trying to struggle to put across. Now, we have a lot of innovations around the country that can create a lot of new economic pathways for us. We are getting more money, but are we expanding the manufacturing space? Okay, but more income seems to be coming from taxation, but are we not getting it, from direct manufacturing? Are we expanding, those areas? Are we creating new economic prosperity pathways that can be able to take in more people? That's the point. I mean, yes, globally, because of so many global disruptions, the COVID crisis, climate change, things are getting out of tangent. But what are these adaptation and mitigation measures that we're bringing onto the table? That's my point. Okay, so if you're saying, yes, every person requires 100,000 to be able to move from point A to point B, that will be right. But in that state, now what alternatives are we bringing to the table to be able to push on it?
Dr. Kengo, if I'm a button, sir, if I'm a button, I think my question is, data came with, Labour came with data. What is the basis of government's 48,000? At least let's hear them out. How did they get there? So that, because when you're negotiating, you need to put all the data on the table. We haven't heard what government is. I just read to you what Labour brought to the table.
Yes. So you should send the question, to the government representative. I don't work for government. I'm not speaking for government. So it's not for me to answer because, like you, I wasn't in the room either. So if anybody has that information, then we can begin to churn it. We're not going to be assuming or presuming what we're not very certain of. If government says 48%, then it's for government to be able to, provide proof or support why they're proposing 48%. I am not a government spokesman. I don't represent government on your show. So we need to throw that question at the person who should be able to give us the right answers, and that won't be me.
Okay, Dr. Okengo, the reason, because we have invited government has not shown up, and I spoke to these numbers and this empirical figure because you said, I think Labour also should be reasonable, be innovative and all of that. So, but we've invited government. We are hoping that they will show up someday, but as we speak, they are not here. Kairi.
Great.
Let me take this to Comrade Saremo. Because while this is ongoing, there are people out there, workers, government workers, even private sector workers who need that wage increase because they go to the market and what they have currently cannot afford much. So I'm concerned about what looks like grandstanding. Should we really be employing all of these negotiation tactics? I'm going to start from the extreme, then I will give you extreme, then we'll meet halfway while people's lives are at stake. Shouldn't there be some sort of speed here, comrade?
Well,
please go ahead, comrade.
This part of collective bargaining process. But what is possibly unusual is that we are in an interesting time in which we have serious economic crisis. Now, if you negotiate in the period of adversity, in the period of crisis of living, as we have now, the crisis of working, and also even the revenue crisis accrued to government, the crisis of production in the case of private sector, the crisis of, the challenges facing businesses. In fact, also a crisis of unemployment, which we have to do that because minimum wage should be paid to only workers that are working. I mean, we also have to know that those of us who are working, we are relatively better than those who are unemployed. So now, if we are negotiating the conditions of crisis as we are now, there will be a lot of pressures on all the stakeholders. And I understand the concern of my comrades. I mean, you can't beat the breakdown of the NSC and TUC as they analyze it very well. I mean, certainly workers can do more with more pay. Again, government is also clear about the need to improve the workers' pay. I mean, nobody has said no, but you also know the few challenges of revenue. Even though we've seen some significant improvement, the federal revenue arising from the reallocation of resources that have gone to one product, petroleum product subsidy, now go to federal allocation. But you also know there are state governments, there are local governments. Even though they have gotten more revenue, they also have challenges of development. So what I'm trying to say here is that nothing will come out as national minimum wage unless it's negotiated. And it has to be shared perspective that we must carry on together. It's not a zero-sum game. It is a win-win game, and that can only come through the process of negotiation. And Kayode has said, so this is the sixth cycle that we are running, even though we are behind schedule. Ideally, the current minimum wage has elapsed, since April. We ought to have done this much more level, better late than never. So all I'm trying to say in reality is that all the three parties have to now come together. And that now comes to the issue of appropriate negotiation in good faith. And I have no doubt in my mind that federal government will have to go, or government will have to go back to the drawing board. Of course, Labour too will have to also come, to also appreciate issues beyond the needs of their members, which I share very well. We also have to think of affordability, the ability to pay off employers, and I know labor is interested to have a minimum wage rate that can defend jobs, not the one that lead to job losses. But the bottom line, and I think this is a very, very important point, is to recognize what are we negotiating on is national minimum wage. Minimum wage is the lowest, below which no worker will earn, and is the only wage that is backed up by law. And we can look at the numbers. In year 2000, the legally permissible minimum wage was 5,500. Due to the efforts of organized labor, negotiation took place, and it moved to 18,000. Then later on, 2018, it moved to current 30,000. So you can see the movement legally permissible. But even this legally permissible, you can check it out. Most workers are already earning more than that. That is clear. Those are the objective factors we need to look at. The average in the public service, close to most workers, minimum pay is about 45,000.
Right.
Some state governments have also jacked up minimum wage beyond the national minimum. So, which means it is just for those workers who are much more vulnerable, but it's put in the law to make sure that no worker has less than that. And the reason why it is also important to underscore this point is that it is the only pay if you employ more than 50 workers. You don't pay minimum wage, you can also be sanctioned legally. There are sanctions.
Well, comrade, quickly, let me come in here. You've made a very vital point, and because we're trying to think out of the box as well, let me go to Dr. Okengo and quickly get his point in, because I know you've also worked on the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, and SDG goal, the SDG 8, that's goal 8, decent work, economic growth. That's what we're trying to approach. But from all projections, Nigeria looks like we're going to be missing the target to achieve SDGs, and this is for the doctor in our Abuja studio. So from what the comrade is saying, Comrade Saremu, so should we then look for a way to then make sure that this minimum wage increase is just targeted at the most vulnerable in our workforce? If the governments are saying we can't take all this huge burden if we do it across board, can thinking out of the box mean targeting those who are most vulnerable and saying this will be for these set of people and will increase it considerably? Is that a way out as well?
No, thinking out of those, there will be to create new economic prosperity pathways. And I can tell you this for free. There are a lot of agencies in Nigeria. I can mention one. There has just been this man who has been made acting DG of an agency, I think in the last 1 month, Raw Materials Research and Development Council. Maybe you should try to bring him on your show. And in 1 month of his assuming office, he has unveiled 46 patents that is supporting almost every sector of Nigeria. This agency has built a modular refinery. They have extracted phytos, for the treatment of diabetes and tuberculosis. They have done scrubbers, that can calcinate lime for gypsum and all that to support the paint industries. All they need is to now scale it up to commercialization. Now, this is just a guy who is 1 month in office. And there are so many, many other agencies like this. So what we need to do is that those people you call vulnerable might just be, that willing workforce that needs to be engaged. And all they need is that if we are able to now put together these prosperity pathways. And I gave you a typical example with our textile industries. As against, the popular cotton, yarn, lint, we're going towards non-woven now. A lot of textile industries around the world are now running around the non-woven fabrics, which is made out of petrochemicals. Now, imagine if you also now had, research and innovation supporting such things, so that you just don't talk about, the vulnerable persons. I mean, you're not vulnerable when you have your hand and feet. You're vulnerable when you are, unwell, when you are disabled, et al. But when you have all your whole parts together and all you're looking for is that opportunity that you're not getting, then that is just, premeditated vulnerability, okay, or artificial vulnerability, if you may. Point I'm trying to make, Kayode, is that this is a country that has so much we can be able to gain from and expand the scope, and more people can get jobs and then earn living wages and not minimum wage. People had their industries, growing back again. I'll give a typical example with Israel. Today Israel is one of the, I mean, it's a technological giant, but just focusing on its startups. As I speak to you today, Israel has over 6,000 startups in practically everything you can mention. So point I'm trying to make is that yes, it's good for everybody to earn well and live well, okay, but it's also good for us to look at productivity and expanding that space as the basis, of us now deciding who is vulnerable and who is most vulnerable.
And it's a refreshing way to look at it if you consider that, the idea of the living wage should not just be targeted at the workers in the organized public sector, but also workers in the informal sector as well. Now, as we begin to reflect on what will be the ideal living wage, I'm coming to you now, comrade. The public perception about what Labour is proposing is that, it's a bit highfalutin, it's not realistic. But if you consider also that with the opinion that that would elicit inflation, another round of inflation. Some have said that that's a myth, really, but that the idea of a living wage is to enhance productivity in the private, in both the public and private sectors. So, comrade, I'd like you to reflect on those 2 points as you also propose what would be the ideal living wage within the context of our current economic realities.
Well, Bukola, I think the ideal national minimum wage is the one that is negotiated through the process of collective bargaining. Is the one that passes through the process of compromises. That is one that is based on the plight of the workers, that addresses the issue of sustainability, profitability, ability to pay off enterprises. Because don't forget, as I've said, it's a tripartite agreement. But the only way we will have wise outcome is for each of the parties to think of each other as concerned. For instance, let me start with the government. Government must realize, and I think this government has realized, that there is virtual collapse of wages, minimum wage, as we have it today. Inflation is double digits, it goes better. I think the latest figure is about 38 or thereabout. High cost of living and food inflation component is the most prohibitive. So high cost of transportation, of rent. So workers are going to serious crisis. So if we talk of ease of business, we should be talking of ease of working. And the ease of working can only take place if workers are well remunerated very well. And I think government seems to be clear on that. Now, organized labor must also think in terms of the thinking of the employers as well as government, to know that in the private sector, for them, wage payment is an item of cost. Now, what cost can you put on the employers in private sector, given what they're already going on, the challenges of electricity, of high cost of doing businesses? Now, what can on them so that they can take jobs? So I have no doubt in my mind that parties come back to negotiation, and as soon as possible, trade the numbers.
All right, comrade.
But as I've said, minimum wage is minimum. All the parties can now continue later after the national minimum wage to engage in negotiation for living wage, which can be done at sectoral level. But minimum wage should be the one backed up by law that is enforceable, that employers can pay, and the one that will be paid will not lead to more job losses, especially for the vulnerable employers and vulnerable employees. And I have no doubt in my mind that it has been done with previous negotiation. There will be wise outcome out of this negotiation. But on the whole, it's very healthy what is taking place. We are celebrating democracy, constitutionalism.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Taking place in a democracy. Because we have freedom of association, freedom to negotiate, and I think all the parties should take advantage of this new round of negotiation so that we can improve our minimum wage. In fact, in UK, we don't have the dramatized 5-year cycle. You have a commission that does wages. I was just checking the record now. Minimum wage just moved from £14 per hour in UK to I mean, from £10 per hour to £14 this year. They have a new commission that adjusts it, and that will now impact on the across the board in terms of consequential adjustment for other workers that have been paid. I think this is the way Nigeria should go. At the end of this negotiation, I will be happy that we do this more periodically. Rather this dramatized one. The other
minimum
one
wage, according to you, is what is negotiated, but it could be well below what Labour is expecting. That's why I wanted you to put a specific figure to it. I'd like you to also react to it, Dr. Okengu, by giving us what you think the ideal minimum wage is. But there's a reaction that I want to take from some of our one of our viewers. EK Kirian says, my worry with Labour is that their proposal of 615k minimum wage was made with the assumption that the earner will have a family of 6. My understanding is that the earners should be those who just started working. So how can someone who just started working, most likely fresh school leaver, have a family of 6? The probability of having such a situation is minimal. So, Dr. Okengu, as we wind down, your thoughts on what would be ideal, and perhaps you also react to what this viewer has said.
Well, I think the viewer has hit the nail. What's important, I also think you mentioned it in the course of your deliverables. What is important is that we know that built-in, costs, which is where you have wages, is a major trigger for inflation. It's important that sinks. Okay, so when you're talking about minimum wage, also know that a lot of the negotiations are done on behalf of government and not the private sector. And it is the private sector and SBAs that have more people in employment, more than government. If cumulatively, probably 1 million or less, in the whole of the government circles are the subnationals and the national. So it's important that in doing this thing, you also now check income. We need to also check productivity, input and output of even the person. And then the receivables of this person who is supposed to be paying this minimum wage. If Comrade had mentioned, UK that has developed, world-class infrastructure that can be able to support these things. Do we have that base infrastructure to begin to, phantom minimum wage? And then even if I mentioned 50,000, how many people are able to pay, their gatesmen or drivers that amount of money on a sustainable basis? What are they also, getting? So point I'm trying to make is that, yes, we must be able to be very open and inclusive about this. Let's look at all the indicators, all the indices, all the challenges, all the prospects, all the threats and all the opportunities. And then we'll put them together and then get some, policy support. I think the policy support instruments can also now support, the finances that we're getting. If we're able to get programs that can be able to, support reduction of rent, support reduction of school fees, support other social services that now, are very demanding of what it is we aim, it might be able to help us, in creating a pathway that works for everybody, both government, private sector, and of course, the wage earners themselves.
We hope that at the end of the day, Labour will smile to the bank, as well as, workers in the informal sector as well. We must drop the anchor on this bit of the conversation at this point. And thank you very much, sirs, for your time on the program. Comrade Issa Aremu, Director General, Michael Imodu, National Institute for Labour Studies. Thank you for your time and contribution on the program.
Thank you, Bukola.
And Dr. Emeka Okengu, Development Economist and Chief Executive Officer, Ant Hill Concepts Limited. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Pleasure. It was good to be here.
And after this, we'll turn our attention to the softer side of things, as we always say, as we celebrate one of our very own thespians. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Well, you love to see her on your big screens. And we thought, wait a minute, why don't we just bring her to the morning brief? It's a no-brainer, right? Ladies and gentlemen, guess who joins us on the show this morning? Omowunmi Dada. She is an actor, voiceover artist, presenter, fashionista. Should I go on?
Lecturer.
Let's just stop right there. So we can have a conversation on the show this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And you look amazing.
Oh, thank you
as you
so
always
much.
do in the movies.
Jeff was saying you're a lecturer as well.
She knows where we're coming from.
I know,
Yes,
right?
I know.
So let's talk about you. You know, I was reading about your journey here, and you look like one of those people that, I mean, I think you knew what you wanted to be. Basically, cultural troop, studied the arts, and here you are. We weren't stalking; it's called research, right? And you know, for some people, that's rare, because a lot of people have to do trial and error. You study medicine, then you end up
Being a director.
You know, right? Because it's
I know.
just trial and error. So I wanted to give us an insight into that. I imagine some people envy you for. Is it something that just happened, or how did you happen at it?
Oh, wow. It definitely didn't happen.
Yeah.
The fact who I am today has been a journey of about 16 years, I will say. But then as a child, I've always been attracted to the arts. I'm that child that was super glued to the television, watching people like you present. I wanted to be on the screen. I was also in Igbo cultural troupe in primary school, Yoruba cultural troupe in secondary school. My dad had told me the story of every man. And then when it was time to leave primary school, I just called all my friends together and I was like, you do this, you say this, you did it. I didn't even know what I was doing was directing. And then we had like a stage play, you know. But then when I was in secondary school, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. In fact, I was in press club as well. I was the assistant secretary general in press club. I just knew that anything art was what I wanted to do. So I was really big on being a lawyer because my parents would always say, oh, you ask a lot of questions, oh, you like to defend people, yada, 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 and all that. But I was still very much in touch with everything arty. From JS2, I started to dance bata dance. And bata was something that only seniors could dance, but I just could. And then I was also in literary and debating club. I would act and do debates and all that. So when it was time to go to the university, I was like, Omowunmi, you love law, you love to defend people, justice, stand for people's rights and all that. You also love the arts. So which would you pick over which? And I was like, I think I should go for theater arts. So I studied theater arts at the University of Lagos. But right from when I was in school, I started to go for auditions. I started to do stage productions, make money. I was quite daring. I would say to my friends that this test that the lecturer said will happen today will not happen because I have an audition to go for. Many times it happened that it never happened.
Was that a prayer or a declaration or everything mixed?
You know, I just knew that I had God's backing and everything I said would come to being. So because I had an audition and this lecturer said we're going to have tests, I was saying tests will not happen. And many times it doesn't happen. But I think it was just once that the test really happened. So I went to the lecturer's office. And they kind of knew that Omowunmi is not like that. She's a good girl. So he just told me, tear a sheet of paper, sit down. And he gave me new, fresh questions entirely. But I know, but to God be the glory, I was best graduating student in my class. I was going in for first class, but you know how, of course, strong to one is very okay. And then after my NYSC, I went into the industry full on, started to go for auditions and all that. There were loads and loads of no's. You know, there were some yeses as well, good times, bad times. But one thing I knew was that apart from acting being something I was passionate at, it was also something I would say my ministry. And I knew that this is what I was called to do. So I was extremely dogged at every opportunity I had, even if it was to play a cameo, a waka pass or anything, I would give my absolute best. And with people seeing me in one scenes, you know, people noticing me, to getting bigger roles. And yeah, that's been the journey. And here we are today.
So let's stay with that journey, all right? One of the journeys took you to, is it America now?
Yes.
Tell us about what was all of that about? Tell us, because I followed through. I was watching. I was okay. Is Omowunmi now a lecturer? What exactly is going on? But I saw that maybe was there an exchange program? And what was it all about?
So I was global artist in residence for the University of Michigan for the fall semester last year. And what they wanted, because they realized that apart from being an artist and a creative, especially in African arts, they also wanted someone who was very much in touch with the scholarly as from the academia. So what I did there was go to different departments and lecture, basically talk to the students about Nollywood, African arts, Nigerian arts, the essence of our culture, our tradition. And it was quite enlightening, especially for me and for them. You know, if we talk about things as simple as names, you know, as Africans, our names mean a lot to us. You know, our names are our identity. And apart from being our identity, they can tell where you're from. For them, someone can just wake up, I like the idea of fish, and I'll name my child Fish, and it won't really mean anything. Also, I spoke with a lot of African students and non-African students, and by the time, many times when I was done, they would be like, "Ooh, I'm so interested in Africa now. Oh, I want to go to Africa. Oh, I want to go to Nigeria." A lot of them even learned Yoruba from me, and yeah, that was basically
maybe
it.
Just in addition, next time you're going, please help us tell them that Africa is a continent.
Oh, trust me, I did a lot of that. Africa is a continent, Nigeria and other countries are countries. Oh, now they know. Apart from that, a lot of my films were screened as well. For example, Anyela was screened at the State Theatre. Right? Yeah, and a lot of people. In fact, the hall was filled mostly with white people, and it was so beautiful for them to know that as much as they have the Michael Jacksons and the Mariah Careys of this world, we also have people like Anyela, like Ebenezer Obey, and all of that. It was really, really interesting for them, and for me as well.
Yeah. You know, amazing coming up close with your background. You talked about how you did stage productions, and I know how steamy that can get. You know, it also speaks to some of your flicks. You know, it's as if they come to you. Maybe you tell us if they come to you or you choose them. Anyela, something from Time Back. Oyade, you played Oyade in Ashiriade. Something from Time Back as well. Death and the King Horseman. Something from Time Back as well. So is it that the epics, you know, just choose you, or are you deliberately sort out those kinds of stories that you'd rather appear in? And you know, you do an amazing job of interpreting those roles, by the way.
Thank you so much. So with me, I would say that I have been very intentional about my career. My dad taught me when I was very young that if you don't know where you're going to, every road, every path will look like the way. So you have to be very intentional. So when the scripts come, I'm always like, how does this speak to me? I'm really, really a huge African and Nigerian enthusiast. For me, it has to tell our stories to the world, and it's about time that we do that. But most importantly, I'm really big on stories that have morals, and we can teach about us to generations to come. So let me take a film like Death and the King's Horseman, right? Eleshionba. It was the very first adaptation of any Wole Soyinka's play. But then, apart from people thinking it was fictional, it actually happened in real life. And it talked about a lot of our culture, our tradition, clash with how colonialism affected us as a people. You know, how most of these colonials think that they thought that the fact that they didn't understand us, it meant that our culture was less good. But then that's not what it is. So for me, I'm really big on telling African stories to the world, and most importantly, preaching morals. So with that, I choose the stories that come to me. But yeah, maybe all those good stories too, maybe they just always come to me. I don't know. I just say that it's all God's grace.
I mean, just listening to your story, a lot of people will be like, she has it all figured out. Everything just works perfectly for her. So maybe we'll talk about some of the downsides. But, you know, you're talking about the epics, and then you talked about even Wole Soyinka's work. It just hit me that, so epics, Wole Soyinka, and then there's the FRK, right? I was thinking about it again. So they have the JFK, the MLK. Nigeria has our own FRK.
We have our FRK.
Just whatever that means, that's Fumilayo
Ransom Kuti.
You played a major role in that movie, which is premiering today.
Yes, it's from today. It's now showing in cinemas nationwide, all over Nigeria.
So, I mean, talk to us, because that's really ambitious. We've read her stories, been inspired. We've heard her son talk about her. But you get to relive that story, not just relive it, portray it as well. Talk to us about that project.
Okay, so I didn't play Formula Ransom Kuti. Kehinde Bankole played Formula Ransom Kuti, but I played Grace Eniola Soyinka, mother of Wole Soyinka. So when BAP called me and said, Omowunmi, I want you to be in my next film, and I'm doing a movie on Formula Ransom Kuti, I was like, about time.
Right.
Now, when we were growing up, which I feel is a huge disservice to everything this woman represented, the only thing we were taught about was, in social studies, was, oh, Formula Ransom Kuti, the first woman to drive a car. And that's about it. But there was too much that this woman represented. A lot of the women rights that we in modern generation now enjoy were the things that she fought for. You know, herself and a lot of other women like Grace Eniola Soyinka, you know, they started this Abeokuta Women's Union, where they came straight to face with the Alake of Egba, who was putting a lot of stress on the women. I mean, so high taxation on this market women that were just selling little or nothing. You know, how do you tell these women to pay for water? They didn't even have the right to vote. Anyways, too many things. And, you know, people like Formula Ransom Kuti thought that enough is enough. They had to stand up for these women who were less educated and who probably did not have the voice to speak for these women, to speak against all of these ills meted to them by the Alake of Egba land and even the colonial masters. And guess what? They fought and they won a lot of these battles. She was so strong, she was tenacious, and I think till the day she died, she didn't stop fighting. And that spirit of fighting, being an activist, fighting for human rights and women's rights never left her, which we can see in generations to come after her. And we can see in her son, Fela Anikulapo Kuti, who never stopped talking about how the government should do better for Nigerians. You know, and even in her grandchildren now in their music and all of that. And we can also see all of this spirit in Professor Wole Soyinka's life as well. His mother was a storekeeper. She was an educationist. She was also a woman rights activist. That's Grace Eniola Soyinka. And these women just did a lot for Nigeria. But then Nigerians don't know, which is why it made sense that we tell these stories for Nigerians to know, for our history to be told right. And if we don't tell these stories right, other people who have no idea who these women were will come and tell it halfway.
I'm seeing traces of Cicely Tyson all around you, because when you follow that journey of Tyson, you see that she's very deliberate as well, just like you, in telling the black story. And I wanted to find out, when you're doing this movie, did you travel to Abeokuta? Did you meet the Anikulapo family or the Soyinka family? Because
the Kuti family.
Kuti family, sorry, I should say. The reason I'm asking is because it appears that women have always been in a very combative position because of how life has always been offensive on them. So what did you do to get into that mental space to be able to carry that role, so that if we go see the movie, we can literally live in the time?
So first thing, thank God the world has become a global village and we have internet, you know, we have access to internet. So I did a lot of research, book reading. Coincidentally, I had read Ake and Ibadan, written by Wole Soyinka, which were stories of his childhood. So I already knew his mother. I had an idea of who she was. So when the script came and I read, and I'm like, oh yes, I see this, I see this. But most importantly, we shot in Abeokuta. And we visited Fela's family house as well. We had a lot of connection to it. We had some of the Kutis as well on set with us, and they shared a lot of experience about, you know, their grandmother. So all of these things really helped us in becoming the character. But most importantly, it's a lot of work being an actor. In fact, the work doesn't start from getting on set. Most of the work starts from before you even get on set. I know that I must have read my script like 4 to 5 times. And the good thing is we had amazing cast, actors who had also done their work. So by the time we all got on set and by the time it all started, we completely forgot who we were. And there were many times we broke down on set and we cried. And we were like, if filming this, we can feel the pain of these women. I can imagine what it was like. What we're doing is reenactment. I can imagine what it was actually like for them to experience all of this inhumanity. You know, there were many times, you know, we cried, many times we held hands together, and too many challenges we faced on set because filmmaking is tough in Nigeria. But the fact that this story needed to be told kept us going, and I'm so happy that it's in cinemas and the world can see.
And you're already getting into character.
No, I'm not getting into character.
You are getting into character, and I'm tempted to
emotional. Right?
Yeah, because I can still relive our days on set. You know, there was a scene where the Parakoyis, who are the palace guards, had to beat the women, and on the call of action, because we had over 500 Abeokuta women support us, they were with us, you know, part of the scene. And these men came and they beat us up. I mean, it was acting, but sometimes the story gets to you that it almost becomes real. And a lot of us actors had some wounds and everything, but you know, for us, it wasn't like, oh my God, I had a cut and everything. It was like, let's go, let's keep going. And it didn't matter if we sustained 1 or 2 bruises or injuries. It could only reflect the amount of wounds, and especially emotional hurt, and how broken these women must have been fighting for what should have just been given to them effortlessly.
I'm tempted to ask you to continue, you know, to talk about formula around some kuti and you know, just relieve some of the scenes in that movie. But I'd like us to expand it a little further to look at the choices that are now informing what directors choose to talk about through their stories. I see a lot of authentic Nigerian narratives now coming from Nollywood. If you consider all of these movies that are coming out, they're true Nigerian stories. Is it the attitudes, the tastes of Nigerian viewers that are informing this, or the deliberateness of the need, you know, to tell the true Nigerian stories?
I know for a fact that I mean, we grew up having Nollywood as boy meets girl, girl meets boy stories. But, you know, we just realized that, like I said earlier, if we don't tell our stories, other people will tell it in a wishy-washy way. And thank God, globalization and digitalization is here to stay. With people like Amazon and Netflix, the whole world, we're open to giving and showing us who we truly are to the whole world. So why not just let the world know the essence of our being, of our culture, of our people, of our tradition, of how beautiful we are as a people, how rich our language is, and how blessed we are with people that are here, come and gone. So I know that definitely filmmakers are now very intentional about, nobody's going to give it to you on a plate of gold. Right. We have taken it, the onus is now on us to tell our own stories. Right. So we're very deliberate about telling African stories, Nigerian stories to the world, because we're so blessed with it.
We can go on and on with you.
I know.
You have that thing. But quickly, 30 seconds, the downsides. You didn't win the AMVCA, you were nominated, but your friend, a colleague, she won it. And I love the way you support women. So was that a downer for you, or a downer mixed with wins? You know, how did you feel?
It was definitely, you know, the downer. It's a big win. It's a huge win to be recognized for your craft, for your art, and that's good enough win for me. Honestly, everyone on that category deserved to win because they've all put in so much. So that Kehinde won it, it's a huge plus for everyone. Honestly,
family.
Oh yes, it's in the family.
Every
one of them, honestly.
There you go, Omowunmi. Dada. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. She plays Professor Wole Soyinka's mom in FRK. So, hey, go ahead, see that movie. I'd like to thank you so much for your time. Wish you the very best.
Thank you.
On this journey
Thank you.
to bigger stars.
I can't forget Madam Koi, by the way.
Thank you, Mom.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
There you have it. But we're turning our attention to something quite interesting, break dancing. Yeah, you might see us bust some moves, maybe break some bones while we're at it. But more importantly, we're talking about how the break dancing moves are now going to the Olympics. Stay with us right here on the morning with it.
Announced that breakdancing makes its debut at the Olympics, but that's not the big story. The big story is right here is the fact that there are 3 people in the studio, 2 ladies and a gentleman, who are going to be making it happen. And they are right here with us. I have with us the U.S. Sports Envoy, Mark Malik, joining us right here in our studio. Also U.S. Sports Envoy, a professor we call Kujo, but his name is David Lyons, comes on. Thank you so much. And Amanda Roach Brown, U.S. Consulate Deputy Public Affairs Officer. Thank you. Love you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Let me start with you about breakdancing. From what we know, it dates way back. It's part of our advocacy, black culture and all of that. As a person, what does it mean to you before we go to the expanded conversation?
Yeah, I mean, as you just spoke about black culture, you know, that's really what it means for me personally as a black woman that's breaking and coming from the U.S. It means culture, it means heritage, it means powerful, just something very, very powerful that a lot of people will say came out of nothing, right? So in the early 70s, in New York City, in the Bronx, children just trying to find something that's peaceful in creation of their own, right? From a time that came out of a lot of poverty and pain and just disturbance. So just finding that joy. For me, it means having something for myself to be able to feel joyful, excited, and also athletic about as well. That also gives me something to be determined about, right? But on the most part, it's really about upholding something that was created, you know, out of this little tiny box that is extremely worldwide, you know, so it's not just in the U.S. and America anymore, but we're here in Nigeria, obviously. We were in Abuja, now we're in Lagos, and we're able to see the breaking community just expand worldwide, and it's bringing different cultures together, you know, all over the world. And I think that's just what's amazing about it, and it just means so much to me when it comes to that.
Kujo, is that what you share?
What was that?
Is your story similar to what she said?
It's quite different.
Oh,
yeah, by default, just based on who I am and my age and what I look like and my gender and many things. But it's similar but different, right? So yes, breaking was created by young black kids in New York City in the 1970s who had nothing. There's a great power in that story because that goes way beyond that location and that time. Right, it's a timeless story because you have people who are oppressed in many ways, economically and racially, and in terms of gender and you name it. But I think that the universal one is economic oppression, right, and economic turmoil. And I think that a lot of people of all ethnicities and all nationalities have a situation like that where they have a sense of hopelessness for the future. They can't imagine what they're going to do after today, after tomorrow. They just don't see a future for themselves. And that hopelessness causes a form of desperation, and that desperation comes out, it gets expressed. It's in often unfortunate ways, and illegal ways, and ways that hurt other people and hurt the person that commits those acts, right? So if we can find ways to redirect that energy, that frustration, that desperation into something constructive instead of destructive, then it's a very powerful mechanism to get people out of the situation that they're in, to be able to create a future for themselves, to be able to create perhaps something financial, a way to make a living, to support a family, to build skills from the dance, for example, in our case, that can apply to other areas of life, such as knowing how to run a business, right? Knowing how to run a small company, knowing how to teach, knowing how to speak, right? There's so many skills that you can learn from taking that craft that you've decided to focus your energy on, instead of something destructive, right? And then turn that into something that can be a very viable career later in life.
I mean, this is amazing. A lot of people just see it as young people dancing, spending time on the streets doing their thing, but it's beyond that, and it's brilliant to hear how this has transformed your lives and the lives of many. Amanda, I'll come to you now, because it's like a dream come true. Starting in the Bronx, now it's global. Well, it was global, now it's at the Olympics, and people would actually get gold medals for this, silver and bronze. Speak to us about how all of this is now coming together to maybe tell the story of how something little can become something really big from a corner in Bronx. By the way, the history also comes to Nigeria and Kaduna. I saw a video from 1959 of some people doing some breaking as far back as 1959. So we also share this heritage. But speak to us about the global, the big picture, really.
No, I mean, I'm glad that you mentioned that piece about Kaduna, because for us, the Sports Envoy program that the U.S. Department of State sponsors is all about cross-cultural connections. So I work at the U.S. Consulate, and with my colleagues at the U.S. Embassy, we're all about connecting Nigerians and Americans through a variety of exchange programs. And for me, the most fun ones are the artistic ones. And now it's interesting, as you mentioned, that breaking is not just an art form, but it's also now being celebrated for its athleticism, and it's now going to be a sport in the Olympics this summer. And actually, the U.S. mission, this is our third Sports Envoy program in the last 5 years. So really, it's important for us to bring professional athletes, artists here to Nigeria to exchange with their counterparts. For us, it's not just about saying, oh, we're bringing artists to come and teach, but it's also about exchange. And I think that's one of the things about breaking as an art form and breaking as now as a sport. It's evolved from, like you said, from, in the Bronx to, many decades later, everywhere, everyone around the world is really looking at like just the art form and just the skill that it takes to perform.
We'll end this conversation at some point, and you guys will teach us how to break.
Okay, yes.
Maybe not. Hope we don't break bones while we're at it. But so I'd like you to also speak to what you look forward to at the Olympics this doing, because I'm trying to just wrap my head around how this will be scored. How would you determine who's performed better? Because art is subjective, right? And I think that's been the debate. It's some form of art. Is it really a sport where you time and say, oh, I clocked 9 seconds? That's quite clear for everybody to see. So what do you expect at the Olympics regarding converting this art to sports?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right in the sense that art is objective. Subjective. So with the Olympics, so we have actually a judging system that's going to be used there. Generally speaking, within breaking for a really long time,
How long for you?
For me?
Yeah.
I've been breaking for 20 years. Yes. Wow. He's been
32 years.
32 years, yeah. So, wow. 20 years here. But
that's 50 years.
Together, right? Exactly.
Some kind of...
Yeah, but within breaking for a really long time, we've, even in smaller competitions and then even larger competitions in general, we didn't have a specific judging system that we use in the most objective way. A lot of times, or for the most part, it was just you're pointing at either this side that one or you're pointing at that side that one. And with that, it can be very imbalanced, like, oh, I'm going to judge for my friend over there and decide that my friend won, or I like this person doing dancing more and I'm just going to pick that person. So there was a lot of work that was put in to actually try to develop a more fair, fairly based
sort of
judging.
Standardize it.
Exactly, standardized judging system, which we had started out with the trivium and threefold system, but which then grew into the A1 system. Correct.
Level A.
Level A.
WDSF level A.
Yeah, WDSF level A system. That's now going to be used in the Olympics this year. So
does that cover like how risky it is, or the ovation that gets to how you break down? What exactly? Because there has to be a way. I know you're breaking it down, so maybe specifics.
Yeah, absolutely. So it does break down into multiple domains actually that lets us focus in on specific parts within breaking. So we have when we're looking at breaking, you're looking at different categories, quote unquote, within breaking. So you have something that's up top, like top rock category, where you're up top, you're dancing up top, and we'll be able to demonstrate that.
Oh yeah, so I know it's broken down into
Exactly, right? So then you transition down to the floor where you have footwork and floor work. You transition into power moves where you're seeing people spin on their heads, right?
I've seen them spinning.
Yeah, exactly. And you've seen it in the videos and floor work, and freezes as well. Yeah. But however, so these categories that we have, we break it down into technical, right? So technical category where we're really focusing on the technique of how you're moving, to make sure it's not sloppy, it's clean, how you're moving.
We're totally out of time, so maybe just 30 seconds. What do you expect from the Olympics this time with what they are going to represent?
Well, even before the Olympics, what I want to say is that they will be doing a performance with Nigerian breakdancers in Ikeja on Saturday. So everyone can go to our social media pages, US and Nigeria, to register for a free seat.
All right.
So you can see it in person.
For what?
To register for a seat.
The seat is free?
Yes. There's nothing to pay for. So
Guys,
US and Nigeria, yes.
So, well, for those of them who are dancing, we'll excuse ourselves. So,
you want to learn, right? You want to learn.
So what are the basics?
Amanda, I know you're not ready for this.
No, I'm not dancing.
Jeffrey, don't run. Don't. What are the basics? If you want to learn to break, what is the first thing you need to do?
Let's move this away.
We can show you some top rock.
All right.
It's basic, some top rock. All right. So this is something that we call cross-dance.
Feel the groove. Into something gonna make you move.
Bring your arms in, and then to the left side, to the right side. That's right. Yes, and come back and bring it in. Can we speed it up a little bit? Back in, yes. Step back, come in. That's right. And back, come in. That's right.
There you go.
And back, come in. That's right. And back, come in. Yes.
I'm missing all this, guys.
Go to the Olympics, exactly. Do you want to do the last thing that we can do? So if we go 1, 2, 3, 4. You're gonna come back, cross.
Oh, cross.
And you're gonna spin around. Ooh. That's right, yes.
My
shoe
doesn't work
like that. Exactly.
Amazing.
Well, my shoe doesn't work for this.
Yeah.
So should we let you do something? Did you
Yeah,
want to do
we
something?
can do something.
Just in 30 seconds. Just a quick one. 30 seconds. We're out.
This is my dream come true right now. Seeing you guys, legends, doing your thing.
All right. Do we have the music playing?
No, just do the rhythm in your head.
Oh, okay.
Just.
Can we take the mics off?
Yeah, you can take the mic.
Okay, all right.
We're totally out of time. So
we're totally out of time.
Don't we have time for this?
Maybe we'll help you. Okay.
Right.
So
you start giving me a clap.
Okay.
Does that work? There we go. Yeah. Hey. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Nice.
Woo! Woo! Come on!
Ladies and gentlemen, live on the morning brief.
Amazing. Thank you all so much for coming through.
For all of us, because we watch you doing your thing. This is brilliant.
Thomas, thank you. All of you, thank you so much.
Amanda, Kujo,
Makamalik, Kujo himself, and of course Amanda Rich Brown. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
And there you have it. We overshot our time, but we hope it was worth it.
We're somewhere around.
Yeah.
On behalf of Bukola, thank you for watching.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.